When you first got home,
Okay.
the first words out of your mouth were, Costco is everything that is wrong with America,
Yeah.
while also being everything that's right with America at the same time.
It was fascinating. Welcome to the Rich and Regular podcast, where we explore life at the intersection of money. I'm Julian.
And I'm Kirsten, and today we are asking the question of our times. Is a Costco membership worth it? So we're going to talk about Costco and why we recently became members of Costco Gang. But first, I want to shout out Night Nurse Nas, who left us a 5-star review that said, staple podcast. This podcast is a part of my weekly rotation, great topics, and knowledgeable hosts. I love the banter between Kirsten and Julian.
I like that. You know, there are certain things that you can just tell from a person's username. And so shout out to my Caribbean people out there who caught that reference. I know Kirsten didn't catch that reference.
I didn't catch it.
You don't know.
I feel like the outside of an inside joke.
You are on the outside of an inside joke, but we see you, Night Nurse. That is my jam as well. So thank you very much for that. We could talk a little bit more about that later. Ching. Okay.
The reason I'm excited about this episode is because you've heard about the loud budgeting trend.
I have heard about it.
The first viral money trend of 2024. But basically, loud budgeting is when you are extra vocal about your financial constraints. It's kind of the opposite of quiet luxury or stealth wealth, where when you decline something, you don't just say, nah, I'm good. You say, no, I'm good because I'm only spending $25 on food this week and I'm at $21 or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's about being vocal and just normalizing, being intentional about how you spend your money. And when I heard about it, one, I thought like people been doing that. It just wasn't called
Yeah, I was about to say
loud
mothers
budgeting.
have been doing this for decades, maybe. Like it's just what mothers say.
But you know, TikTok likes to label things. But I also thought about how you've been loud budgeting our groceries for the last 2 years. Like you've been very vocal about how we've adjusted to inflation and how we've figured out a new system that accommodates our son's growing appetite and just accommodates the fact that we only believe in spending, X amount of money on groceries every month.
That's a really good point. I don't consider myself a loud budgeter.
Well,
I think it's really, for me, just a matter of being reasonable and saying guys, can we all agree that it is getting ridiculously expensive outside? And while you may have it, yes, you're earning a lot of money, but do you feel right spending that much money on some burgers? Quick side note, even just on X. I'm getting good at calling it X and not calling it.
It's always going to be Twitter,
formerly known as Twitter. But people are ranting and raving about how expensive Five Guys burgers has gotten, right? It's little things, it's the big things, it's all the things. And it's not surprising to me that this idea of loud budgeting would all of a sudden sort of rear its ugly head, but all of a sudden would become something that people are really, really proud of and very vocal about. And yes, for us, it started, and I would say more specifically for me, it started a couple of years ago when we just started thinking about, all right, we've got one kid. And in my mind, deep down there, I've always thought of Costco as something that people with multiple children and big, giant garages with tons of storage space just did for fun. I never really thought about the economic value of it, or even I thought about people who are part of large organizations or summer camps or churches, and they always need vats of ketchup and mayonnaise and tuna. I thought of it more so as a warehouse and not necessarily a place that everyday families might actually be able to use and incorporate into their grocery budget. And so there was a good bit of learning for me, but the trigger was really just because I wanted a brisket. I wanted to make a brisket. It was that time of the year. I wanted to smoke a brisket like I normally do. I couldn't get it at the farmer's market. I'd gone once, I tried, it wasn't there. Went again, it wasn't there. And I just got tired of searching and trying to figure out a good time to go when I might be able to actually get one, because I know that they sell them at Costco. And I've ordered it through Instacart years before, But I've since given up on Instacart. I can't think of the last time I've
Yeah, I
ever
wouldn't
used
trust
it.
them to pick a brisket.
And I'll always have to deal with that issue. And so I said, you know what? Let me just at least go and see if there's some other way that I might be able to get it. I don't know why I came up with that idea. Long story short, that was the true inspiration. But when I think about some of the other reasons, again, it's really because it was just like, this is the moment that we're in. There was me wanting something that I couldn't find somewhere else. There was the fact that our food budget is consistently growing, and you feel it, especially during those times where our son is at home. And I think given it was during the holiday, you just start to realize, man, that's a lot of waffles. Like the waffles are gone, the chicken fingers are gone, the cereal, the milk. And so after a while, you start to realize, okay, there's got to be another way, which there naturally is. It was also the fact that we as a whole, even when our son isn't at our house, because we've not been ordering and we've not been doing nearly as much Uber Eats as we used to, we're just eating that much more food. And so while we were benefiting from the cost savings at Aldi, it also just required a lot more frequent trips. And so I was thinking about all of the other ways that we might be able to reorganize the operation. Because I think about the kitchen as like an operation. And I was like, all right, how can we save money? How can we save time? And after doing a little bit of research and then again, being triggered by my desires to make a brisket, I said, you know what? Let me go swing by Costco and see what I can learn. And I learned a lot since then. So no regrets, which is why we're talking about it now.
Yeah, I mean, at the time when he told me he was thinking about going to Costco and getting a membership, I got excited because my homegirl Tracy had just posted some caviar that she got from Costco. And I was like, wow, I didn't know they sold caviar. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, all right, I'm on board with whatever you decide.
We got a truffle salt, truffle oil, and truffle something or another. It was a gift that someone ended up giving us that they got from Costco as well.
Really?
So I was just thinking like, all right, there's something to this. There's some more to this story than just big old jugs of condiments.
But to your point, like all of my mom friends have been teasing me for years for not having a Costco membership, especially since we only live a couple of miles from one. To them, it's like not having Wi-Fi. Yeah. But I ignored them because one, I was already paying over $100 a year for Amazon Prime membership. And that was where I got my basics and I didn't even have to use the house. So that just made more sense.
Yeah.
Two, I'm not the primary grocery shopper in our home. You are. And at the time, I believed that the primary benefit of the membership was for groceries. So it didn't make sense to buy a membership for something that I barely did myself. Yep. And when I had mentioned it to you in the past, you were very much on some like, that is for, you know, people with 8 kids or people who lead youth groups. You were not into it.
I am willing to say that I was dead wrong about it. Yeah. And I'm glad that I revisited it.
But the third reason is because I'm not the most strategic cook. Grocery stores have always been...
That's kind.
Yeah. Grocery stores have always been a slippery slope. I'm what people would call an aspirational shopper, and I'm very much distracted by the end caps and the fancy things and buying things that I don't...
That you didn't go there for.
Yeah, buying things that I don't have a plan for. And so if you put me in a grocery store where they have groceries and flat screen TVs, I'm not, you know, I'm liable to come home with a new appliance or a new electronic and forget the fact that I was there for Parmesan cheese.
Yeah.
So that actually leads me to my first impressions, because when you came back, first of all, I didn't know you had never been in a Costco before.
I couldn't figure out if I'd never been or if it had just been a really long time, but I don't think I'd ever actually been inside one. If I did, it had to have been when I was like a teenager.
Yeah.
And I was just going with someone.
And they probably looked different back then.
Oh, I'm sure. My mom never had a membership, and so I'm pretty sure we didn't go with her unless there was some other way that she went. But I don't think I'd ever been in one other than that time. And so I was genuinely curious because I was like, let's go to this place that I've seen hundreds of times and I've heard tons of people, to your point, you say the mom groups are giving you all this tips and those kinds of things. For the men, it's really just about like hot dogs and pizza. And that's where I go to get my meats and those kinds of things. But the combination of the two were really, really intriguing. But go ahead. You were saying your first impression.
Yeah. When you first got home, the first words out of your mouth were, Costco is everything that is wrong with America.
Yeah.
While also being everything that's right with America at the same time.
It was fascinating.
And so I wanted to get your first impressions, like describe why you would say that.
I don't want to get too deep into that, but so everything that's wrong with America. And it was really just a matter of acknowledging that there are people who can get tons of the things that we use and rely on to survive at a deep discount, while there are people outside, because you can't even come in there without
You can't even come in.
You can't even come in. That was part of my first impression, because I certainly thought that, well, if I want a membership, I've got to come in and be able to
It's
see.
a velvet rope.
And they were very
You
clear.
can't even get in. You hating from outside
You
the
need to go
club.
around. Now, they did allow me to go to customer service and basically get like a temporary badge.
Yeah.
But even that felt weird. I felt like I was walking around.
With a little scarlet
And
letter.
it really
Like,
did.
ooh, first timer.
I was like, oh, you've never been? And I just knew someone was going to say something to me the entire time. I ended up seeing Keisha Lance Bottoms.
All right.
I saw a bunch of people that I recognized from my son's school. So I was like, all right, this feels like a true club
Yeah.
that I should be a part of, but I am not a part of this club. And so all of that was happening at the same time. But I felt like, wow, like everything that I kind of use is here. Not everything, but like for the most part, a lot of the core things that I use, a lot of the services that they offer are things that I'm getting ready to use. And I can get all of those things at a discount. Now, that's kind of what's right. But then on the other side, it just kind of felt like, wow, like this is really what they mean when they say it's expensive to be poor. Because I eat applesauce, but you eat applesauce, but I can buy applesauce at a 20% discount and you can't because you don't have the car to fit a giant box of it in, or you don't have the membership or can't afford it. And so all of those little things, the storage at home, and we'll get into all of those other reasons. But it was a mixed bag, but not to the point where I was like, all right, I'm not going to get this membership, because I walked out of there with an executive membership, which was another story in and of itself. But my other really quick first impression was around gas, because that was one of the things that a lot of people rave about. It was like, oh my gosh, I only get my gas at Costco. And that's not that big of an issue for me because we don't really drive that often.
Right.
And so I didn't really care too much about being able to get it at a deeper discount. But the first time that I did do it, I was pleasantly surprised by that experience. It was a little off-putting, though, the first time that I went to go get gas. Now, I'm not even sure if I shared this with you or not, but I fully expected there to be like a gas attendant, someone that was at the front door or somewhere to basically say, hey, you can get gas here if you want to. That wasn't the case. But the moment I got there and got out of my car, there was a woman who was in a uniform and she beelined directly to me. And I was like, oh, let me go ahead and pull out my ID. And she was, hey, can I use your card? Can I use your card? I forgot my card at the pump, or I forgot my card in somewhere else, but I'm a member. And I felt like, is this a test? Like and I looked around and I'm telling
take you away.
It was really only like 3 seconds, but I could see like the security cameras. I was like, I just got this membership and somebody is about to take my membership. I felt so weird. And I just sat there and I gave her my card.
Oh man.
And she went, but I said, hey, the reason why I did it was because I was like, all right, well, I can pay attention to the process. I can see what she's doing, because again, there was no process. I didn't know what to do. So long story short, I learned about what she did. She gave me back my card and I was like, all right, I got my card back.
You got.
I almost got by a tiny little woman. So all that to say, my first impressions, mixed bag, but a lot of it was really because I feel like I kind of needed like some training wheels a little bit. Like there was no one to help me better understand how the store was laid out and how that's different from a typical grocery store. You called it a grocery store and I almost interrupted you.
I know.
It's like a hybrid between like
it's like a mini mall.
A Home Depot meets a super Walmart and, maybe like a little bit of Buc-ee's or something like that, just because of the food and the samples and stuff. It was a really, really great experience. So yeah.
Now, you did get a membership. Did they hard sell you on the membership since you were already inside? How did you decide on the executive versus just the regular?
So that was an interesting experience. I went to the customer service desk, and I'll be brief. I went to the customer service desk and I asked the woman, hey, I've never been here before. And it was an older Black woman. And she felt like, she looked at me like, it was oddly like almost like sexual. It was like a flirtatious thing. And it was like, you think you can walk in here and you get a membership. I was like, I just want to see it. Cause I'm like, I just want to.
She's probably one of the most powerful people in the county.
I'm willing to bet that she is well known.
Yeah.
And she was just like, yeah, I mean, you'll be back, And I was like, I'm just looking. I'm just going to go take some pictures, which is exactly what I did. And she came back and was like, I'm going to go ahead and she go, do you?
Yeah. I bet.
You got a little taste and now you want some more, don't you? I was like, yeah, I need to go back because I found the brisket and a couple other things that I wanted to go ahead and pick up. But yeah, it was interesting. But long story short, it's $60 for the gold membership. It's $120 for the executive membership. She gave me some ridiculous number, like basically 99% of people go with the executive and 90+% of them renew every single year. So like basically once you go executive, you never go back. And I was like, all right, well, let's just go ahead and do that because I could do the quick math in my head just from the things that I purchased and say, yeah, this is going to pay for itself. And in addition to that, with the executive membership, you get this cash back reward at the end of the year. So basically they calculate all of your savings over the year and then they basically cut a check to you, which I found a lot of people look at as like a nice little Christmas gift kind of thing.
Yeah.
Reward day is a really, really big thing. And so all of that to say, I opted for the executive because, also like $120 didn't seem like too much. It was worth the trial run, if nothing else. And that's what I went with. So it was really, really interesting so far.
Spoken like a suburban elite.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think this is what they call people with Costco memberships. I think my first impression happened in the parking lot because you could just see how big the carts are and how big the cars were.
I was about to say, even the spaces. And again, I'd seen these things in passing, but because I'd never been in them, it didn't register to me until I actually went through the experience. And I was like, oh, all of this makes sense.
Well, for me, it just reinforced the idea that everything there was huge and meant for groups instead of like smaller families. But once I got inside, I was really impressed. My first impression was being impressed. I had heard about how much they had expanded their SKUs, but I didn't expect to see so many of the brands that I use and love on a regular basis. Everything from skincare to vitamins and supplements. Yeah. I think what I expected was to see a bunch of Kirkland items, which is their store brand, which, by the way, is a massive brand. It does over $58 billion a year, which is bigger than Nike. But you wouldn't know that unless you're a member, because like you said, you can't even get in if you're not a member. And I honestly wish I had known more about their business model, which I didn't up until recently. But their business model is to cap the markup on any products that they sell. Yeah. The report that I saw said they don't mark up items more than like 15%. And then, of course, they cover the cost of their warehouses and the employees, but they keep the prices low and break even on products. That's how you're able to get them discounted. And they make all of their money on memberships, which are growing because of the low prices. Yeah. And instead of being greedy and kind of distributing that profit in the form of executive bonuses and big old private jets, not saying that they don't have those things, but they generally use their profits to make the membership more valuable. Yeah. So doing things like the 2% rebate or giving dividends back to shareholders. This year, they announced a special cash dividend to any stockholder that was $15 a share. So it's, it's pretty powerful. Their business model is really brilliant as a result of their membership model. But what that means is that the marketing strategy is very much like, if you know, you know. There's not these big old commercials or like high pressure sales. It's like, if you're a member, then you already know what it is.
I got the feeling or the sense of Berkshire Hathaway. Yeah. Once I had the in-store experience and then started learning a little bit more about the way that the company is organized.
Well, Charlie Munger was on their board before he passed.
Which makes perfect sense to me, right? Like you could start to see the spirit of that kind of care in everything that they did, where it was no frills and they really just cared about making sure that this business was going to still be in business 30 to 50 years from now. And that's exactly why we're there. So I felt a little late to the train, to your point. Your friends were probably right for teasing you a little bit. Now, along those lines, there were still a couple of things that I wish I knew before I'd actually joined. Again, we're fortunate to be able to say, I'm not too worried about the $120. I'm confident we'll get that back and then some. But there were a couple of things that I really, really did wish that I knew. So granted, my perception of the Costco shopping experience was just wrong, I would say. It was wrong. I won't even say a little off. It was just completely wrong and outdated. But with that said, there is still some value in the extent to which you need to organize yourself. So my first thought, like just going back to why I didn't want to shop there before, was as I was just looking in a refrigerator, I was like, no, I'm not willing to give up, just making it up, 5% of the square footage within our refrigerator just for these things. Before you know it, we won't have any space, and it's going to create more problems than it actually solves for. But I soon found out that that was actually wrong because they don't just serve the giant containers. They serve like a 3-pack of something. And I was like, oh my gosh, now that I can work with because I can still fit the smaller container. I can just put the other two in some of the other storage areas. The second thing I did not realize was there were no bags at checkout. I feel like nobody talks about that. Now, granted, I was a little more comfortable with that because I'd been shopping at Aldi over the last year or two. And so that part I wasn't too upset about, but I really wish that someone had mentioned that. I did not, that did not register to me at all. The identification checks was also something. So yes, I knew that you needed to have your identification out while you were checking in. But recently, from what I understand, they started also checking identifications at checkout. So right when you get in line, there's going to be someone saying, hey, show me your ID, just to make sure that you are a member, because apparently you can get in there without one somehow. So
sneak in.
People have found out some other ways to get in there without one, but you can't actually go through checkout without validating or showing your identification to someone. Another big one, and this is primarily because we are an American Express household for the most part. We're not like dedicated credit cards or any one particular brand. But to shop at Costco, they only take Visa, which makes sense. Again, when you think about the spirit of being low cost, Visa being one of those widely accepted low cost credit card companies, it kind of makes sense. I didn't realize it was that restrictive.
Yeah.
So that was really, really good to know. In terms of storage, I was just thinking about our garage, but I actually have been thinking about storage much more broadly, just to kind of make sense of it all and to really make sure that we're getting value, not just in terms of money. We'll talk about time in a second, but it's not just like making sure that you make space in your garage. It's also your refrigerator, it's your freezer, it's your pantry, it's any other storage areas that you might have that might be worthwhile reevaluating. But I think the biggest thing for me, and part of the reason why I was willing to not just join, but go with the executive membership, was around time. Right. And it was like, hey, between all of the trips that I take going to the grocery store, some of the other trips that I take going to other specialty grocery stores, plus all of the things that you do and purchase for our household on Amazon and some of the Target runs that you take, all of those things I think can be shifted to Costco, purchased in bulk at a discount. And I think all of those things combined, I really led to me saying, wow, this is a no-brainer. And it unlocks kind of time that we can then devote to doing other things throughout the year. So that to me was like one of the really, really biggest perks.
Yeah, I definitely underestimated how much we would learn about our consumption in such a short period. Because like you said, with some things, the packaging itself is intimidating.
Yeah.
Something like Kleenex, which I'm used to seeing in a 2-pack or a 4-pack, comes in a 12-pack at Costco. And so you came back and you were like, well, they have this, that, and the other, but we're never going to use all of that. And I have to correct you and say, actually, we do use that much. You just never notice because it's always replenished. I always replenish it. And the same thing is true with coffee. I make our coffee every single day. And I know when we're low on coffee, another bag will show up the next time that you go to the grocery store.
Right.
But if you were to ask me how much coffee we use, how many bags of coffee that we go through in a year, I don't know.
Yeah.
So when you showed up with that giant bag of coffee, I was like, wow, really? But then it makes sense if I actually think about how many times I've seen a low bag of coffee and it just gets replenished.
Yeah, and I think that goes for several things, right? So it's not just coffee, it's ketchup, which I've come to understand that my son at this point just drinks. He just drinks. Food in general is really just a vessel to consume more ketchup. It doesn't matter what it is, but like ketchup, I started thinking about some of our go-to quick lunches and the amount of times a year that I will go to get spring rolls or coconut shrimp or little dumplings, all of those little things I can now just buy in bulk. And again, like I can probably name like 15 or 20 things that because we have the storage now, we can buy in bulk. And it just means that we won't ever really have to, I'm going to say won't ever, but it just means that we won't have to take those quick runs anymore. We can always just go and pull it out and make sure that we have what we need. Yeah. But before you can get to appreciating that benefit, I think there are a couple of things that people really need to do. And again, we think about our food budgets in terms of how much money did we spend over the month or over a 3-month period, but you don't think about the quantity.
Right.
How many bags of coffee did you go through? Like, we don't really look at that unit.
Yes.
We look at it more so like this was the cost. And I think once you understand that, once you have a better understanding of that, that is one of the things that make you say, okay, now it makes sense for why don't I just go ahead and buy the larger portion of it and then figure out, if necessary, some other form of storage to make sure that I'm benefiting and this isn't creating some kind of other issue downstream.
That's such an interesting point because it's true. We don't think about units in terms of food consumption. We only think about costs, and grocery stores measure it. They obviously have the data, which is why the things on your list are always in stock. They know that people are coming for those items weekly, if not more than weekly. And so that's if you could develop a system like that, you would probably figure out where the opportunities to save in your budget actually are.
For sure. And I think so along those same lines, there's also the number of times that you have placed multiple orders for something, right? Like, what are the things that trigger you to do a quick little order for Amazon or quick little order to Target and go for pickup? So all of those little things, it's like, take a different level of inventory. Don't just look at how much money you're spending on these things and start looking for a solution. Also look at the amount of times, the hours, the 30 minutes here, the hour there, just to go get this one or two things. And then, to your point, getting suckered into the marketing while you only went in there to get cough syrup, and now you came out with, a bag of honey roasted almonds and, something else.
Sounds so personal.
A quick little game or something like that. So it's all of those little things that I think Costco really puts you in a better position to insulate yourself from. And then I can't stress it enough, making sure that you have a storage solution that works for whatever it is that you're buying. Because again, it's very simple to say, oh, well, yeah, you're going to get some of these big, bulky things. You need a lot of space. That's true for larger things like paper towels and toilet paper, or maybe detergent that you're going to end up getting like large gallon bags of. But there are other things that aren't that big and still take up a good bit of space, but you've got to stop and think about it. So once you're done doing that and you make that list of all of the things that you buy, whether you buy a lot of it or you just buy it frequently, those kinds of things, it should not be hard to find and say, all right, well, if I were to save 3%, 5% here across all of these other things, you kind of see where the cost savings comes from.
Yeah.
And again, if it's something that you use a lot of, like, you get that cash back. Basically, it pays for itself, like whether you're getting the gold membership or the executive.
Yeah, and you can use the old regular size packaging and just refill it. You can just create a sustainable practice where if you have the ordinary sized ketchup bottle, once it's empty, just refill it with the bulk size so that you don't have to take up all of that good refrigerator or pantry space on these larger items.
Yeah.
Now, I actually joined, since we have gotten our membership, I joined a few Costco fan groups on Facebook. And I knew Costco Gang was about that life, but I wish I knew how engaged they actually were. They're a really fun bunch.
Yeah.
They send notes and make posts when they find things. They give little hacks and share different store experiences. And so if you are a Costco member, I would highly encourage you to join some of the membership groups on Facebook to get the most out of it. I'll also add, to piggyback on a point that you made earlier, I wish I had known how much cheaper the gas actually was. Yeah. Not that I drive a lot, but premium gas has been, in the $4 range for about a year. And the gas there was $3 and something. I don't remember how much it was, but I felt like I hadn't seen that since 2019, 2018.
Yeah.
And then the last thing, on top of groceries and just efficiencies, I knew about Costco travel and the perks that you get with packages and rental cars, but I also wish I had known more about their online offering. Their website has everything that you could imagine on there. I've already added it to my bookmarks bar on my computer, so it's top of mind. And this year I'll be starting there instead of on Amazon or Target when I'm looking to stock up on summer activities or back to school or holiday shopping, because they have literally everything on there.
So let's talk about whether or not it's worth it. I think by now it's pretty clear where we kind of lean, right? Certainly I do. Sounds like since you've joined a couple of groups, you are team Costco.
Worth it for different reasons for me.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, right? There are different reasons. There are different ways of approaching it. And it being worth it is a matter of value, which is very subjective. And so some people may say, yes, it's worth it, but they still prefer to go these other ways. And that's totally up to you. But I think there are a number of little things that you can do just to kind of help you streamline that decision-making process. One, we've already kind of alluded to, which is making that list, trying to figure out what are the core things that you know for sure you can get from that store, calculate the amount of money that you might be saving from that. If you're looking at potentially getting the executive membership, then you're just adding another layer to say, all right, if I had to find another $60 worth of savings to kind of make up for the cost of membership, is all of it worth it? So that math, I think, is pretty simple to do. But there are a number of other ways that I think that you can kind of dip your toe into it just to see if whether or not this shopping experience is something that you would like, because I think that can take a little bit of getting used to, and that certainly has been the case for us. And so one of the things that I would call out is if you have a friend who has a Costco membership, you can either just roll with them one time and say like, hey man, can I just get a feel? Can I, just ride alongside you? You don't have to literally get into the buggy, but you can actually ride with them and do a test run, if you will, or a trial run to see if you like that experience. The other thing that you can do, which I think is a really great hack, is give them the money to purchase a gift card for you. Or I think you can actually just buy the gift card on your own. And then you can actually use a Costco gift card so that you can shop in the store because you actually do have that cash. So that's a nice little way to bypass actually making the annual commitment, and I think puts you in a position where you might be able to say, hey, I actually like this, I want to keep it going. And then you can make a decision around what degree of membership you want to get. But the other thing that you can do, if you just want to get a feel for the kinds of products that they have available, is what we mentioned before, which is the partnership between Instacart and Costco. So if you have an Instacart membership, you can actually select Costco as the store that you want your shopper to buy something from. And that will give you a sense of saying, all right, I want to buy these things from this store, these things from that other store. I've never done the actual multiple store thing, but you do have the ability to test out those just in case, you have a particular quality need, or if there's a particular variety of products that you want to make sure that if you were to start buying there, it meets your needs in the same way those products might have met your needs that you were getting from another retailer. So those are a couple of things that I think people should really think about. But in my opinion, certainly for a family of three with a 6-year-old with a pretty healthy appetite, in previous years, I would have never considered that, like just those fundamentals, 3 human beings being enough to shop at a Costco or to get a membership. And I can say that without question, like I was pretty wrong about that. So I would imagine there are others who might have had the same outdated and flat out wrong understanding of what shopping at a Costco may have been like.
So it sounds like it's not worth it if you can't break even on the cost of the membership because you have all of these other alternatives that you can explore, from Instacart to gift cards to just going with a friend and tagging along with them.
Yeah, I think if you're just looking for a quick discount, there are other ways to get that discount that don't require you to get membership. I think worth it is a matter of not just whether or not you can cover the cost, but think about the downstream challenges that it might take there. And again, you're going to have to figure out storage solutions, whether buying bottles that actually do fit in the places like your refrigerator or your pantry, or in our case, having a flat out system between buying things in bulk, having storage, which is inclusive of a freezer to store frozen goods, and even taking it a step further and using a vacuum sealer, which by now you should know I'm a huge fan of. And I can stitch together all 4 of those different storage solutions that allows me to go buy something fresh, freeze it without it going bad or having freezer burn. And that for me makes it without question worth it, not just from a time standpoint, but also a financial standpoint.
All right, I'll add that it's not worth it if you don't have a baseline or a reference on how much these items cost at other stores. Because otherwise you're just going to end up buying more than what you need and then having more than what you need. And regardless of how much something costs, it's not a deal if you don't need it. The reason we were able to break even so quickly is because we knew which items were significantly cheaper and we could ignore the rest. I could look at the collagen, the allergy medicine, the toothpaste, and say obvious yeses. Other things were just like, I don't know. I think we can go through what we have at home, revisit it when it's time to determine, do we even go through enough of this product or this item to justify buying it in bulk? I actually passed on the 12-pack of tissue, opting for the smaller 2-pack of tissue from Target because Bo is in school all day and I had already sent tissues to school. But when spring comes around and it's allergy season and I'm preparing for back to school in the summer, that might be the chance to revisit that purchase. So just know that you'll cycle through each of those things, and you really want to have a price comparison in mind as you're deciding which things to purchase or not.
I would add to that there might also be a skill development that you would need to do in order to reap the benefit of shopping at a Costco. So in my case, there were certain things that I'd always wanted to do. And I feel like there's an entire world out there of people who are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you still buy your pasta sauce, right? Because it's so easy to make. My issue was, I just don't want to have to make it every single time. And so I told myself that this year that there were a couple of things that I was just going to start making on my own. And tomato sauce was one of those things. And so I figured out, actually now I can buy larger jars of crushed tomatoes. I now have the larger pot that I can cook it in. I now have the jars that I can store it in. And again, I have the skill set to convert those raw products into a finished product that I'm really, really proud of. So if you don't have those things, you don't want to walk in, to your point of being an aspirational shopper, with the idea of saying, oh, I do think that I can unlock those things, unless you've actually truly honed those skills and you know for a fact that you can do it. Doesn't mean that you can enjoy pasta sauce. You'll just be buying those other products in bulk, and those, which is a completely different situation.
Yeah, I think it's important to acknowledge that there might be an initial investment beyond the membership costs.
Correct.
To make sure that you have shelving to put all of this extra stuff on, or mason jars, or a food saver, freezer space, all of the things that you need to actually store bulk purchases. I wish there was some sort of drop box at the front of every Costco where you could just unpack the items that you're not going to use or that you don't necessarily need, and trust them to donate it on your behalf. I feel like that would be a really easy way to distribute the excess food, but still benefit from the discount. But in the interim, if you do have items that you're not going to use, just keep in mind that there are so many people out there that are experiencing food insecurity. Yeah. And so if you aren't able to pass up on buying 6 heads of lettuce, even though you only need to, take a second and find a community fridge in your neighborhood or a food bank program that's near you and drop off the excess. If you can avoid wasting it, please try to do that. I think that's a really important message and the perfect way to end this little episode.
Yeah, I would completely agree, especially now, right? These are tough times for everyone and anyone. And I would take it even a step further, even if you're not talking about giving it to a food bank or a community kitchen, they may just flat out be a friend or someone that doesn't have a partner, and you dropping off little extras here and there saves them a trip. Which, if you're a single parent, is more than enough. Or if you're a busy professional, whatever it is, those little things, I think, just helps to foster and build community. And maybe if you're lucky, they've got something that they can offer you as well.
Yes. All right, y'all. I think we've answered the question. It's worth it for us. I hope you figure out if it's worth it for you.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Rich and Regular podcast. If you like what you heard, let us know by leaving a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcast platform, or leave us a comment below and keep the conversation going. We will see y'all next week. If you like videos like this and want to see more, make sure you click subscribe and turn on notifications.